All right, so now it's my turn to play through both amplifiers. I'm going to play through the purple, red, and green channels as well for you. And you know what? At the end, I'll do a quick comparison between the clean channels. And for my segment, the overdrive pedal will always be on because I always push every amp. And the overdrive pedal I'm going to be using for this segment is the Horizon Devices Precision Drive. And we're going to go ahead and start with the Mark III and switch back and forth between it and the Mark II with the same riff. So here we go. Alright, so I noticed the same thing you did. The Mark II is definitely brighter. There's this really nice kind of edge to it on the top end. So if you prefer that over something that's just slightly darker, then you'd probably prefer the Mark II. But the Mark III definitely has a fuller sound. It's a little fuller. It's voiced a little different. It doesn't have that same amount of brightness. You might be able to achieve that by twisting the knobs a little more. I don't know. We tried that earlier, and it seemed to kind of get into territory that was like, it just, the knobs aren't pushing the frequency that is being pushed in the Mark II. It's just a different voicing. So, and again, like, I think that if Revv was to make a different channel and voice it differently, it would be really stupid of them to voice it brighter, because that is, on the Mark II, that's as bright as you would want to go on the Mark II up here, you know. The Mark III is slightly darker, but it doesn't bother me. I love the other textures that it's given me. It's definitely given me a little more fullness, and there is a less stiff feeling on it. It's slight, but noticeable. The Mark III is just a hair bit chewier, but I know I played your Mark II, it was over a year ago, I think, when I had it on the show. And I will say this, when I played the purple channel on the Mark II last time, about a year ago, it didn't work for me. It was just, it just didn't have enough gain, or I don't know, something. It was just a little too stiff or whatever, but I don't know, maybe my tastes have changed, but it totally works for me tonight. I mean, it works. Like, I could play the purple channel on the Mark II all day and be fine with it. It actually, I don't know how you taste change over time, and then you play stuff and you revisit it and you're like, what was I thinking? This freaking works, you know?
The only thing that's changed with the amp itself since the last time you played it and now is it has been completely retubed. Power tubes and preamp tubes.
The plot thickens.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that's, you know, like the difference, because I don't know. I'm not convinced that just that alone is, you know, making you feel that differently about it today than you did a year ago. But the tubes that are in there now are all tube amp doctor tubes.
Okay.
And those were recommended to me personally by Dan Trudeau of Revv.
Okay.
Because I could tell after owning the amp for about 5 years, you know, it was getting, you know, some of the tubes were getting a little squirrely, and I could tell it was time for a retube. And I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to swap them all out at the same time. Mm-hmm. And those are what he recommended. The original tubes that were in the Mark II were the Chinese tubes.
Okay.
Which were great. You know, I liked them. I loved the amp the first time I turned it on. But you know, I think, you know, the tubes at that time when you played it were probably getting to be about 4 years old.
Yeah, it's possible that could have been it.
That's the only variable that I can think of right now.
Gotcha. Comment below if older tubes do sound and feel different than newer tubes, you know, and on top of that, he changed brands, so maybe that helped. And we're talking power section and preamp section. Yeah, so he did a whole, you know, all new tubes everywhere. So, yeah, that's interesting to know, because it might have something to do with that. I don't know, but it's totally working for me tonight. So, again, it really depends on what you like. If you want something that's a little brighter, it's got that searing kind of thing to it, then the Mark II might work for you. But it's not like the Mark III is far behind that. It just is a noticeable difference in that top end, you know. I like them both. I think they're both, like, amazing. Can you imagine them both in the mix? You pan them left and right. Oh, my God.
That's why I want both.
Oh, I don't blame you, dude. I'm really digging this comparison right here. They both feel great, but I'd have to give the feel, just for my personal taste, a slight photo finish edge over the Mark II, only because it just has that little bit of give that I love so much, you know, and it takes a pedal very well. So it's a little more low end, a little chewier. All right, so now let's see how the red channels compare on both units, and we're going to start with the Mark III. Here we go. Okay, so I'm definitely hearing more mids in the Mark III. Are you hearing that too, or is it right nuts?
I wasn't really honing in on the mids.
Mm-hmm.
I just noticed that the Mark III was more in my face and brighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
It
Mark
was actually
III?
it was actually biting my head off a
Really?
little bit.
Wow.
But
okay.
I'm also, you know, like
You're in a
sitting
different spot.
you're facing this way. You know, my ears are more pointed to
Yeah.
the amp.
And I got the in-ears in, so I'm
Yeah.
listening to the mics. So yeah, that's interesting. Because I'm hearing more mids in the mics, you know, anyways, through my in-ears, and it sounds a little more low end, but I'm hearing more brightness out of the Mark II, is what I'm hearing. So it just depends,
Yeah.
I guess.
You hear what you're hearing. I mean,
Yeah.
you're the player in this situation.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, what you hear is more important than what I'm hearing. But I'm also angled a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And I don't have in-ears in.
Yeah.
I felt like when we kicked on the Mark III, it was more like just
In your face.
smacking me in the face more.
Okay. In a good way or a bad way?
In a good way, but
Little bit
more
bright?
than I would have used
More
for what I
gotcha.
do. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, fair enough. You know. Yeah. So, and I again with the feel, I'd have to give a slight photo finish edge to the Mark III. You know, just a hair. It's almost negligible, but I mean, I just feel a little more comfortable playing that amp. You know, maybe it's familiarity. I don't know, but I feel a little bit more supported with that amplifier. So I think they both sound killer. I would take either one of these to a show and play them with full confidence, and like, you know, I'd feel really proud to play through either one of them. I think they're both amazing. Should I do the red channel in a mix?
Yeah, go for it.
one thing I noticed was the effects loop on the Mark II does not work well, or maybe even at all, with the Helix.
Yeah, I can't speak to it too much because I don't use an effects loop at all.
Yeah.
And we tried using the Mark II with your Helix when we first brought
Yeah.
my amp over a year ago or so, and we were having some trouble figuring it out. I don't.
Yeah.
Again, this is not to say that it doesn't work. It's just I haven't been able to figure it out right.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't really spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. But just based on you having the Mark III and you had no problem with getting it going right away, and the Mark II has been a different, been more challenging.
Yep, maybe because I have my Cherry Tone Molecular, same thing, does not like my Helix, but it works perfect with the HX effects, and any other pedal just doesn't like the Helix.
Yeah, and I've used the Mark II with the Synergy setup, using the
preamps,
the effects loop with the preamps and stuff, and had no issue with it. So
the effects loop works. It just doesn't work with the Helix. So I wanted to make note of that, because when I was playing, I turned the effects on, they weren't there.
Or at least we haven't figured it out.
Yeah, we haven't figured it out. So I would say that for lack of a better term, I would say that the Mark III has a more maybe normalized or mainstream or more accepting kind of effects loop in it, right? It just works with more stuff, I guess.
Seems easier to figure out, at least.
Yeah, exactly. But for you, it doesn't matter because you don't use a lot of effects. I play leads, so I have to have some delay and crap like that. So, yeah, so just something I just noticed when I switch back and forth. I'm like, where's my effects, And I remember, like you said, when you were here last year with it, I mean, we couldn't get it to work, so we had to go without effects that night, which, it works. It just doesn't work with the Helix. So, little thing to, make a point about there. All right, so let's move on to the green channels on both units. And again, I'm going to keep the overdrive on because that's how I play and how I set up my amps. And we'll just, get, I guess, my thoughts for whatever it's worth between the two channels. And we'll finish up with the clean channels on both units, and then we'll wrap up with our final thoughts. Okay, so let's start with the Mark III, and we'll switch over to the Mark II while I'm playing. Freaking huge difference. Yeah, I love the green channel on the Mark III. I do like the green channel on the Mark II. It's good. There's nothing wrong with it. It just does not suit my style of playing at all.
It's one of those situations where you have to play the right kind of riffs with that.
Yeah.
If you're going to use it as a rock and roll channel, and you're going to do some stuff with that's heavier, you're going to have to keep in mind it's not going to have that hair on it. Yep. It's not going to have that aggression. I mean, come on, this thing has aggression levels on the green channel.
Exactly, which is awesome.
Again, I mean, they went for it on that channel on this version of the amp.
I really love what they did with that. If I was in a store choosing between these two amps right now, it would almost be a coin toss between the two. Depending on your taste. Like if you want something that's got a little more low end and a little chewier feel, you'd probably go with the Mark III. But if you want that little bit of searing kind of, and I mean that as a compliment, that sizzle in the top end, and it's a little stiffer, then the Mark II would be more yours. But man, that green channel would be the tiebreaker right there. It would just be like, green channel's better on the Mark III, in my opinion, works better for what I do. I would totally use that channel, and I wouldn't feel like I spent money on an amp with 4 channels but I wasted it on one of the channels. You know what I mean? Where, like, because on the Mark III, there's not a penny wasted on that, in my opinion. I could use all 4 channels. It sounds absolutely phenomenal in the green channel, and I could do some really tasty, chunky kind of riffs on that for like some breakdown leads or something like that. Some moody kind of breakdown leads on it would sound really cool, and there's a thickness to it that I really like. There's like this really rich, thick feeling and sounding thing that it's doing, and it makes you want to dig your pick into the strings a little harder and do some really cool riffy kind of things, and it just really works big time. It's very inspiring. I would have to say on the Mark III that the green channel is probably the most inspiring channel for me. Like the other ones again are great and inspiring and everything, but the the green channel just pulls a different kind of creativity out of me and makes me want to play differently, and that's why I say it's very inspiring, because it just makes me want to kind of go to different places with it.
I kind of, I kind of think of it in terms of what kind of rock you're going to play with it.
Yeah.
So, like, when I think about the Mark II, I think of, if you're going to use the green channel, maybe you're doing some Tom Petty covers, maybe you're doing some CCR covers with it or something like that. If you're using the green channel on this thing and you're doing the classic rock thing, you can get more into that Thin Lizzy territory.
Yep.
Like, you can get more into the, the Black Star Riders thing, where it's like, it's not as hairy and as high gain as the purple channel or the red channel, but it's giving you more than what you're going to get from the Mark II. And you can go there with this one.
Exactly. And you can do classic rock with the green channel on the Mark III and have a little more beef and thickness to it and a little more aggression to it without sounding like, well, who hired the metal guitar player? Like, what the hell's that guy doing here, It sounds good enough and feels good enough to fill up your sound without sounding out of place, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just sounds killer for that kind of music, too.
And it's a little bit more, I wouldn't say a little bit more, it is noticeably more compressed sounding than on the Mark II, because we were trying to, do some level matching with it. And we had to account for the fact that the Mark II is cutting differently because it's so much more open and biting you. Where this thing was just kind of like sitting in the mix a little bit easier.
A little softer, with that compression. But once you juice up the volume and equalize it with that, then now it's not softer anymore. It's more, you can hear the more aggression that it has when you equalize the volume between the two. It's like, oh, there it is. Now I can hear all that texture. So yeah, I gotta give the the Revv guys a lot of props for that green channel. It's just stupid good. It really is.
And the thing too is, like you were talking about, with the green channel, you doing that classic rock stuff, but you can get even a little bit more, push a little bit harder.
Oh yeah.
Well, so now with them taking that green channel, revoicing it, and then adding the drive settings, where you can get even more out of it. Now, if you're playing that rhythm, you're the only guitar player in the band, and you need that little boost for a solo. Well, they've figured all that out. It's all something you can do either through MIDI or I'm sure with their switcher. So that's even more flexibility.
Exactly.
Now you're not switching from the green channel to the purple channel for a solo, or having to find an overdrive pedal. If you're not wanting to use an overdrive pedal, you just want to use the amp. Well, just
kick the drive up a notch.
There you go, man.
It's got 2 levels.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually 3. It's 0, which still has a lot of great, gain in it. And then you hit the drive button once, you go to blue, and then you hit it again, you go to red. So you got 3 levels, really, of drive that you can get out of it. And all 3 of them are completely usable. They're just giving you a little more edge each time. And I'll say this, too. Like, bouncing off of what you're saying about the features and like pushing the, maybe with the floor switcher, or whatever to change things. If you guys aren't using MIDI with an amp like this and getting like a Helix or anything else that operates, amplifiers via MIDI and does all the switching and stuff for you, you're nuts. You're really losing out. This Helix is switching. It can switch every feature on this amplifier on every channel with a tap of a, you just hit a switch, and then 60 some commands can happen all at once, and it's seamless. And I'm telling you, you're missing out if you're not using something like this with your amp, because a lot of people are like, yeah, I'd like to use that, but when I'm playing, I don't want to reach over and, well, buy a freaking Helix. Buy an HX Effects, buy an HX Stomp, buy something like that, and it'll operate all those things for you with, tap your toe on it, you're done, I'm telling you, you're missing out if you're not using a Helix or something like that with amps like this, because now you can utilize all of the features, and it's seamless and very easy. All right, we got the clean channels dialed in, so let's go ahead and start with the Mark III, and I'll play, some stuff on there, and we'll just switch midstream and see how they compare. Okay, so what I noticed was the Mark II is a little brighter, and the Mark III is a little warmer. So depending on what you like, I think the Mark III felt a little better. It felt a little, I don't know, it was a little weird, softer to play, where the Mark II felt a little sharper to play. I felt like if I struck the pick too hard on the strings, I might get that little sting that you get, Where with the Mark III, I felt if I struck the strings a little too hard, I'd get a little dirt. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of a bright, sharp thing hitting my ears, it would be a little bit of dirt that would come out. So, depending on what you like, that one or the other will work better for you. The one thing that I might have to make a note of as well is I think that because they put more gain on channel 2, which is the green channel, on the Mark III, maybe there was a bit of a slight compromise on channel 1 to make that happen. I mean, I could be wrong. I didn't build the amp. I don't know. But there is a warmer sound. Maybe they voiced it that way on purpose. I don't have a problem with it. I think it sounds great. I like a good warm, clean channel. But again, if you hit the strings too hard, it can break up slightly. It's a noticeable but very subtle breakup you'll get if you do that. Whereas the clean channel on the Mark II probably would not break up at all. I think it would just, you know how clean channels can get. If you hit the strings too hard, you get that plucky kind of sting to your ear when people pluck the strings too hard. A compressor will fix that anyway, so it's kind of a non-issue. But I would say again, the clean channel on the Mark II is definitely has more of a chiminess to it.
Yeah, that's the word I would use. It's got more of a chime. It almost has that twin reverb thing kind of going for it. American style, clean amp thing, and it, it's one of those clean channels where you can hear every little detail.
Yes.
So you need to be on your game.
Yep. You should play it carefully. It's probably great for if you play with your fingers, because it's bright enough to give you that nice chime still when you're playing with your fingers, but still have that nice articulation,
Yeah, I like that clean channel. I think, the other cool thing about it, playing with that amp for quite a long time now, is if you have a bass guitar and you don't have a bass amp, you can run your bass into that clean channel.
Really?
And get that tube warmth, front end, and then run that into your... whatever kind of, whether you're using a load box or like an aux or, torpedo type unit, take the DI from that, and you can get a really cool thing going. Yeah, I've done it plenty of times with it.
No,
yeah,
that's
it's just
cool.
a little trick thing, that I've used it for, because it's such a transparent sounding clean, in my opinion. It's got a good sparkle to it, a good chime to it.
It does.
We have the bright switch engaged on it.
Yep.
So, if it's too much for you, you can take that that bright switch and, you know, toggle it down and kind of, you know, lay off the brightness a little bit if you want. So it is definitely the cleanest clean channel of the 5 amps that I own.
Very clean. Yeah, it's probably records very well. Like if you're in the studio and you want to record some clean tracks, that would be a great one. I mean, both would be great, but if you really want that chime, you know, and that super, super clean sound, I mean, the Mark II is definitely going to give you that. If you want a little more warmth, then the Mark III would be more your speed. Now, I wanted to quickly show everyone a feature on the Mark III, which is wide. So I'm going to go ahead and play an arpeggiated chord, and Jay's going to turn that feature on while I'm playing. It's off right now. Check this out. It's actually a pretty cool feature. Yeah, it just kind of gives it a little more push. I think it makes it a little more present, and it does sound bigger, right? You know, maybe wide was the right name for it. It sounds a little wider, a little more forward, and I think it's kind of cool, kind of a cool feature on the amp. And another thing I'll make a note of as well is one of the things I really like that they did on the Mark III is they put a noise gate on it.
Oh yeah,
That's
great. Yeah,
what a great feature.
Yeah, I agree. I wish that's one thing I wish the Mark II had, but I mean, you know, it's an evolution. I mean,
yeah, it's the way it is, man. You know, I mean, there's always going to be an evolution when they come up with a new amp, which is great. It's not just, oh, we renamed it. You know what I mean? There's actually evolutionary things on there. So the other thing is, not only is it revoiced, more gain on the green channel, and you know, a different, very different green and blue channel on the amplifier, but you're also going to get the noise gate, as we said before, and you're also going to get the 2 notes torpedo stuff inside. So if you want to take the amp to a gig and not bring your cab, you can totally do that and load in whatever IRs you want, or use the ones that it comes with, which actually sound pretty good. And yeah, I mean, you got yourself a really, really nice amplifier that isn't such a pain in the ass to bring to a gig, because you don't have to lug the cab anymore if you don't want to. And with the 2-note stuff, you get the twin tracker, you get all these different EQ functions and everything. The whole app and everything works with the amp as well. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the 2-note stuff. If you're not, watch some videos about it, because all that stuff in those videos is in this amplifier as well. So I think that's a really super cool feature that they put in the amp as well. So as far as flexibility goes, and, you know, giving you features that aren't just gimmicks to make you want to spend more money or to buy the amp in the first place, I think they nailed it. They're giving you stuff that you'll actually use, actually appreciate, and they really work really well for the amplifier. I think they completely knocked it out of the park with this amp. There's definitely a broken windshield in the parking lot with a baseball that went through it, as far as I'm concerned. They really killed it with this amplifier. What are your final thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we go channel to channel, blue channel on the Mark II, I prefer the blue channel so far, or the Mark II clean so far from what I've heard. Just a little bit more hi-fi sounding.
Okay.
But I like the fact that, you know, on the Mark III, they didn't just take the same channel and put it in there. Like they tried something different, right? Yep. And I like it. It's not to say I don't like it. It just kind of depends what kind of song you're writing, what kind of guitar you have. All that kind of comes into play. Green channel, ding ding, you know, winner chicken dinner here, right?
The Mark III,
I mean, it just takes the versatility up like another 3 or 4 notches, right?
Big time.
Love
that channel.
Already, to me, was a versatile amp, the most versatile amp that I own in my collection, which is nowhere near as big as yours, but that's a different conversation for another day. But the green channel on this thing is just, I could see myself using that green channel a lot.
It's fun to play.
Yeah.
It's very fun to play. And again, like it pulls me out of my normal playing, and it makes me get more creative and do stuff that I normally don't do. The green channel is such a great experimental channel for me. It's fun to experiment on it and in ways that still suit my taste. You know, not stepping so far out of my comfort zone. I'm in my comfort zone, but it's a whole new area of that comfort zone with the green channel on the Mark III. It's amazing.
Yeah, when I was able to pull off like some of the alternative metal, like helmet type drop C riffs that I was doing with
Yeah.
the green channel, then I was like, oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
I can totally do that. That VHT Fryette Pitbull type, cutting dry in your face thing. But then I can also, kick up the drive on it and do some, more classic rock and roll
Yep.
riffs with it.
Yep.
Purple Channel, this is where I was conflicted because I told Jared, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't really want them to F with that channel too much because I love it. It's
Yeah.
my channel, and I
Yep.
can't imagine how it could be any better. So I'm very curious to see what they did. Did they when they said that they revoiced it? I'm like, oh man, okay, we'll see what happens. In all the videos I heard, it sounded great, but I'm like, well, we'll see when I get in the room with it.
Yeah, that's when it really matters, because there is a compression on YouTube that kind of covers a lot of the details up between amplifiers, and it really does make a difference. So when you're in the room with it, that's when the tales will be told.
So I would say that for me, Purple Channel is like, there is not a better thing. It's not like this one's better. To me, this one's different. It's got that sizzle we talked about, but this
Yep.
one's got a little bit more beef to it.
Yep.
It's got a little bit more aggression to it. It's got a little bit more balls to it. This one, it cuts. It's got a great top end to it. I love the way it sounds.
Yeah.
It's just two different approaches, but the traits, all the character traits that this thing has, the Mark II has, the Mark III still has it. It's still my channel. It just, I don't even want to say enhanced, because if I never heard this third channel, if I never heard the Purple Channel in the Mark III, and they just took the third channel from the Mark II and put it in there, I would still be okay with it.
Yeah.
Right? I'd be fine with
Yeah.
it. But now there's, I guess what I'm trying to say is if I had both of these in my collection, I wouldn't be putting the Mark II aside and just hooking up this one. I'd have them both, because now, like we said, you can have both best of
Different
both worlds
flavors.
situation.
Yep.
And then the fourth channel, the red channel, I was said before, I never totally gelled with the red channel on the Mark II. I like it, but I don't love it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? This one, I think I was down here for less than 2 minutes dialing in that red channel. Like right away, I was like, okay, boom, 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 this sounds great.
Done.
Right?
Yeah. You loved it.
Yeah, so if I end up, which I will at some point, pick up the Mark III, I'm definitely getting the full mothership, all four channels, because I want to be able to use that fourth channel more. And I think part of it's just I've got a love thing for that, love affair thing with that third channel on that amp, because I just know it so well and I'm so comfortable
On the
with
Mark
it.
II. Yeah.
On the Mark II, exactly. Yeah. So then you add all the features in, the gate, the torpedo stuff. I mean, you basically have a Captor X inside of an amp.
It's such a no-brainer. If you got, seriously, if you have the money, burning a hole in your pocket, and you're looking for an amplifier that's super versatile, and let's say you've played some Revs in the past that were like, yeah, this channel worked for me, but I didn't like that, and I'm not going to spend all that money just to have one channel that works for me. I totally get it. I've been there with other amps as well. I totally understand that. That's not going to be true with the Mark III. It's not. You're going to buy it and be like, the worst part of it is I don't know which channel I like better. Like, they're all going to work for you.
Yeah.
They really are. You're going to be conflicted, not over, oh, I shouldn't have bought this. No, you're going to be conflicted over literally, like, which channel do I like the best? Because they're all so freaking good. And they're different enough to pull you in different places, but within your comfort zone. You're never going to step outside your comfort zone and go, I would never use that, but maybe because I spent all the money, I should learn how. No, you're going to want to use the channels in this amp, all of them, where, again, if I was to buy the Mark II, I would still think it's a great amplifier, but I would be a little bit bummed out about about the green channel. I'd be like, I paid for that, but I'm not going to use it. You know, it's like, you know.
That green channel is the needle mover for me too.
Yep.
Yeah, because I'd be satisfied with the purple as it is. The red, I can tell you I will use it more with the Mark III.
Yeah.
Purple's still going to be my go-to, but I will use the red more now with getting this one at some point. And the green, I mean, that might even be like a starting point channel for me for a lot of things. I may test a lot of my riffs on that and say, okay, do I need a little bit more aggression? Do I need a little bit more, push? Okay, time to go to the purple channel.
Exactly.
Or, oh no, you know what? This sits really nicely here.
Yeah.
So if you have a Mark II, don't feel like you need to put this thing up on Reverb or eBay and sell it. Don't do that.
Great
Save your pennies, and get the Mark III. Don't sell your Mark II because I'm telling you there is some magic in there with that purple channel the way it is, but you want to get the added benefits that the Mark III has with it.
And one thing I'll say too that I said to you earlier, I want to say it on camera now, is when you brought your amp over here for the first time, I did like it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was a great amp. But when it came time for us to come down here and dial everything in for me to play my mixes and stuff like that, I felt more comfortable with the red channel than I did with the purple. I was like, the purple channel just doesn't work for me, and the green channel just doesn't work for me. And at that time, I was kind of like, and I'm not saying they were bad, they just didn't have enough gain or aggression or whatever for me. But I don't know if my tastes have changed or if it's the tubes. I don't know what it is. But the purple channel tonight was like, fine on your amp. It was like, I have no issue with this channel at all. Just totally works for me. The green channel still didn't, even though it is a great channel, but it doesn't fit my taste, but it's still a great channel. It just didn't work for me. But the purple channel definitely worked, and the red channel is, I mean, for me, was really good on your amp as well. So, but yeah, I guess that pretty much sums it up. I mean, both amps are freaking amazing, obviously, really good. But I'm glad that Revv, when they came out with the Mark III, again, it wasn't just, let's rename it and change a couple things about it that are arbitrary, and like let's just have a cash grab amp.
They could have literally just added the 2 notes tech in there and the gate. Did what they did with the effects loop and call it a day. And,
you're right.
Kept everything the way it is, and it would have been an enhanced Mark II.
You are absolutely right.
And there's lots of amp companies that do that, and everyone's okay with it, right? Because now you're getting the next iteration of that amp. They literally revoiced
everything,
every channel in this amp.
They tweaked the purple and red, and then they overhauled the green, and they did something I think is really cool with the blue channel, because I like the warmth. And if you want a little more chime, just turn up the treble or the presence, and it's fine. But yeah, you're right. That's a very good point, because they could have easily just added those features and been like, all right, Mark III, and most people would be like, awesome. But now that I know what we would be missing if they hadn't have done those other things, that would have been a mistake. But
this amp to me, the Mark II, is like that album that you buy at the store, and it's got like 10 songs on it, and like seven or 8 of them are really good, and then there's a couple in there where you're like, I'm probably going to skip that one once in a while.
Yeah.
This one is like the CD you bought at the store where like every song is great, and there's like, 6-7 hits on it that are
and
like
a bonus
number
track.
1. And it's like you don't skip any tracks on that album, right?
None.
And that's kind of how I feel. And if you don't have any other amps, and you're like, look, I'm a 1 amp guy or girl, I can't really do more than that. This to me is one of those amps that you put on your short list.
It really is. It's the most likable, no-brainer type amp I've played in a long time. It's very easily likable. You don't have to do anything weird with the knobs. You know, yeah, oh my God, I hate amps that you got to go, well, you got to turn this knob in this dumb spot, and then it affects that knob, so you got to move that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like this Rubik's cube of an amp in a tone stack, and I just hate that.
Like you have to have the Game Genie code to get it to just right to like get to get it to the level you want to
triangle,
be at.
triangle, square, circle,
Up, up, down, down, A, B, A, B. Yeah, there is no trickery really.
I hate that.
You know.
Yeah, it's very straightforward, very likable, very usable amp, and they did a killer job on it. So, well, hey, thanks to Jay for bringing over the Mark II. I appreciate you bringing it over. You know, and thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate it. To all our subscribers, thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys and all the support. And if you haven't subscribed and it's your first time here, please do, and click the bell so that you can be notified every time we either go live or come out with a new episode. Well, I got a lot of great stuff coming up, and I'll see you on the next one. You know, I almost freaked out because I always check at the bottom of the screen, and every once in a while I'll do a whole segment and it's not recording, and I'm like,
that's the worst.
son of a